Hi, my name is Nicole Nagelli, and today I have Michelle Lamb with me.
Woo! Hi, everyone.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so hello, my name is Michelle. I am currently in the animation industry working as an assistant animatic director at Tonko House. Currently, we're working on an unannounced project, but it's kind of been announced. So I don't know, you can Google and stalk away. But previously, I've been at Netflix Animation working on Arlo, the Alligator Boy, and I Heart Arlo, which is soon to be released this upcoming next month or so. And then prior to that, I was at Netflix Animation again slash Glen Keane Productions on Trash Truck, where I kind of started my career as a storyboard revisionist to storyboard artists. And yeah, now we are here all working from home.
Awesome, cool. Here's the icebreaker question. Tell us your favorite quote, but in your own words.
Oh my gosh, my favorite quote. That's going to be so hard. I guess the one that I've been thinking of a lot lately is that practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
How would you put that in your own words, you think?
So I guess growing up, we always just realized that we were told that practicing is how you're going to get better at things or how you're going to improve. But the more that you just kind of do something consistently, you're just turning it into a habit, but you're not always sure if what you're doing is always going to be good for you throughout your entire life, whether if it's drawing or just, eating certain foods that are unhealthy or whatever. But I think like just learning to diversify and switching things up from time to time is just a way that we're going to constantly challenge ourselves to grow in other ways beyond just drawing. It's just as a person too. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things I've been trying to teach myself, is to just be more open to trying new things and just not always be doing one thing all the time. So yeah.
What role has fear played in your mindset towards art?
So fear has always been something that has scared me, of course, like anyone else. When you're younger, you're afraid of certain things. I feel like for some reason when I was little, I personally felt more scared than the average child or student in my class, just because whenever I saw other kids go up and like do things or perform, they always did it so confidently and just acted like they were at home performing in front of their parents. But for me, I was always just like shaking, my voice was quivering, and I just couldn't like breathe properly if I went up in front of a bunch of people or presented something like art for my class's project. So I felt like it just got to a point where, as time went on, I just got so tired of it that I was just like, I'm tired of always feeling nervous about presenting myself or presenting my artwork or even talking about myself or my artwork, that I was just like, I need to find ways to just be better at this, or just be more comfortable with being in front of a lot of people or just putting myself out there. So this really followed me throughout my teenage to young adult years. And when I was in college, I was still afraid of speaking up in front of people. Ironically, in our first story class ever, we had an assignment or something where every student had to go in front of the class and just tell a story verbally. And you would think that I probably went up to tell a story, but I was actually the only student in that whole class who did not go up to tell a story. And this was my probably one of the first few weeks at CalArts for our story class. So ever since that, I kind of just felt so ashamed of myself. I felt so bad. I was just like, you really couldn't go up there and just tell like a story. Like, oh my God, and you want to be a story artist? Like, what are you doing? So I really got tired of that part of myself. And during one of my internships at Cartoon Network, we had a thing where we went up to go talk to people and pitch an idea, whether if it was a story, a film, it could just be anything, a product, just for a bunch of the industry professionals to see. And for me, I was just like, I have to do this, but I really have to get over my public fear speaking and just showing people my art and talking about my art in front of a lot of people. So I knew it was going to be a thing where I told my friends, hey, just please practice with me, watch me, criticize me, but in like a reasonable way, and tell me what I can do to be better. And my friends weren't even artists, by the way. So they were able to just solely focus on me speaking as a person and just giving a presentation. And I feel like having them just witness me got me more comfortable to speaking in front of people. And then ever since then, it's not like I just became perfect at not being afraid. It's like I would still be afraid and nervous from time and time after that. But I think just putting yourself out there to do it more, like even doing this interview or recording videos on my YouTube channel and just using my voice, got me warmed up to just being used to speaking and getting over my fear of public speaking.
That's very interesting. You mentioned your YouTube channel, right? Is that
Yeah.
one of the reasons why you started your YouTube channel?
I would say it wasn't like the sole reason I started my channel, but it was definitely helpful in the fact that it helped me get over my fear to some degree, because I feel like when you practice speaking in front of a camera and you're starting to better articulate your words and know how to express what you're saying, you start to become used to knowing what words help express what you want to say better. Because I feel like whenever you just speak to people in public, you don't really know what is the proper thing that you want to say, and you might fumble over your words. You don't know how to say that properly, and I feel like that in itself adds more anxiety, because you're just like, oh my god, I screwed up and I said something weird, now they're probably picking on me or whatever. And most of the time people don't really think about the awkward mistakes that you make, so that kind of helped me just learn to be better at just not caring if I accidentally mess up. But also having the YouTube channel for me to just sit in front of a camera and just talk to myself and just trying to be as concise with my words as possible so I don't have to spend 6 hours editing everything, like really helps with just, using my vocal cords to say what's going on in my brain. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I totally relate. Like, I actually have
Yes.
the opposite problem of what most people have. I love public speaking, but
Wow. Oh my, I
the
wish I
opposite
had
is
that.
true. Yeah, it's just interesting and it's surprising because I'm an actor, so I do self tapes all the time. I talk to the camera, but
Mhm.
speaking to a camera as yourself, that thing is an interesting thing to learn for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I've always just felt more comfortable with anything that's just me and myself, because I'm like, I know all my flaws, I know everything that's wrong with me, so it's nothing new if I just mess up in front of myself. But when it's other people, for me, it adds that layer of like, oh, they're going to be thinking things about you, they're going to be telling other people this about you. But then when it's just me and myself, I'm just like, yep, it's just us. I know you better than anyone else, so it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Um, how does fear affect your work and how do you combat it?
Yeah, so fear has always been something that for drawing, I feel like when it came to my student films at CalArts or any large school assignment, it gave me a lot of anxiety just knowing like, how am I going to finish this in a way that I can still put in the best quality I can? So one of the things that I feel like I really established during my high school years as just a student that I took over to my time at CalArts was just being really good at finishing my assignments on time. Because at school, even though you had this big film you had to do, you still have homework from other classes you have to do. So you're just like, how the hell am I supposed to finish a student film that I have to direct, storyboard, animate, color, everything by myself? And on top of that, I have to write essays, blah, blah, blah. And that stuff gave me so much anxiety because, I came to this school just really wanting to do a good job and really improve as an artist. And I feel like not finishing my film or not finishing an assignment is just like, for me, that was going to be like failure almost, just because I really wanted to become more accountable for my work and finishing it. Because prior to CalArts, I always liked making my own projects, but I never finished it. So I think one of my goals going into school was just saying, hey, I don't care if this comes out terrible. It can be, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want it to be done. So one of the things is whenever the school year started, I would kind of come in just having a story idea at least prepared, or at least just a few story ideas prepared. And then I would learn to just break down this large assignment into little small chunks throughout the week, because I feel like a lot of people, even myself in the past, used to just wait until the last minute to do things when, your anxiety levels are at its highest. And that's actually what ends up getting you to do stuff, because you're at this high with your stress that you actually get things done, but it's all going to be crammed last minute. I personally hate that feeling just because I feel like I just can't handle that feeling of my heart beating so fast to the point that I can't focus or relax on anything else. So I really wanted to make it a goal to just work on a little bit of it each day, even if it's not like you're spending 5 hours on it, maybe just 20 minutes a day, maybe just an hour, 5 minutes, just doing something a little bit every day put me at comfort to actually finishing things. So in a way, like having that fear of this huge like assignment just looming over you kind of forced me to just be like, okay, the way that you're going to get this done is to start as early as possible and try to assign at least a small part of it to at least every day. Like you might think it's annoying to do it every day, but 20 minutes to an hour of a day every day actually isn't that bad at all. So doing something like that while being fearful of this project, I guess, kind of really helped propel me in being deemed as this fast worker, in which, like, I don't really think I am a fast worker. It's just like I just delegate things to a little bit every day that just makes it seem like I got it done fast. So, yeah, but it's like the majority of the day I'm still doing other things too. So,
Yeah, it's really good advice. Um, I wanted to ask you, what motivates you? Is it fear, or you're a person who does like a lot of different things, and those kinds of people, they usually have a really strong reason as to why they're doing what they're doing. So what is that for you?
yeah, so I feel like it definitely starts off with fear first, because I feel like I can see it now looking back at some of my work. One of the things that I would say I missed is that I feel like I didn't really put myself entirely into some of my work. Like I feel like I could always have pushed it a little more to make it my own project or assignment that really stood out to be, oh, this is something Michelle did. And, others might disagree, but that's just how I personally feel about my work. And I'm always critical of it. But I feel like in the past, I focused so much on just trying to make sure I beat the deadline, making sure that I didn't come in with an unfinished assignment. Because I feel like maybe it's a thing that I got from school, because I went to a school that was pretty academically driven. And if you didn't like succeed, then you're kind of just deemed as a loser back in that time. So it was just like I just felt like I really needed to do well and just make sure I got it done and got a decent grade or something. So I feel like that kind of ruled me over more so than, this is my passion in life. I sacrificed things and my time and just spending time with friends just to be here. Like, I feel like I do have some ounce of that in me back then, but at the same time, it wasn't the thing that was entirely driving me. But I feel like after I started working in animation was when those feelings of, oh, this is something I've wanted to do since I was little, like that started to come into the picture more. Because first of all, the nice thing about working in the industry versus doing your own student assignment is that you're kind of just like, we're all working on something together. It's not just your film anymore. It's like everyone's film, and you're working as a team on this. You're delegated a certain task and you only have to focus on that task, which is really nice compared to having a film that you have to do everything on for. Now you are like, oh, I only have to focus on the storyboarding today. So I feel like that pressure of getting something done after you enter the industry versus your student film kind of gets taken away, just because you only have like really one job to focus on, whether if you're a storyboard artist, a concept artist, or animator, like you're only really doing that thing. So just focusing on storyboarding helps save on the time aspect, and saving on the time aspect helps get rid of some of the fear of not being able to finish on time. And now I feel like, oh, I can focus and remember why I'm here in the first place. And like sometimes when I work, like when I used to enter the studio first thing in the morning, like just putting on some music and just having a moment of acknowledging like, hey, I wanted to do this since I was 12 and I'm doing it right now. That's awesome. Then like that with the music together just really like gets you motivated. And then I feel like you end up being more focused and you tend to work faster when you're focused because you're not distracted by other things. So I feel like that kind of is what is driving me now. And that's not to say that the fear of not finishing doesn't exist anymore. It still does. Like I still am fearful of not like juggling things properly. Like now that I do comics on Instagram and YouTube videos too, I'm just like, I want to make it a goal to upload weekly. And now it's like, oh, let's make sure I can keep that up while still having a full-time job and everything. But I guess like the difference is now that like even if I don't upload a video or post a comic, like no one's really going to be punishing me other than myself. Like there's not a school or institution that's going to grade me on not uploading every week. So yeah.
Do you think if you didn't have like those deadlines in place, or say like you never like got into the animation industry for some reason, um, how much would you still be doing like on your own? How much art and stuff? How would that affect it?
Yeah, so I honestly don't know if I would be doing as much art just because I feel like the discipline aspect really does help a lot with actually producing things. Because prior to going to CalArts, I was also just drawing during my spare time, but I was kind of working on that whole concept of not having any deadlines or not having like anyone really holding me accountable. And during that time, I was pretty aimless. And that's not to say that anyone without a schedule is going to be aimless. It was just for me when I don't have a schedule or like a plan for myself. I don't really know what to do. So I end up just working on something and I either ditch it and I never finish it, or I just spend days and days and days working on this one random thing and then it never sees the light. And I don't know, like things that I work on when I don't have a schedule or plan for them just kind of end up in an art dump. Like I used to make these compilations of sketches and doodles that kind of just I doodled it this one time, but it never went into a project. It never went into anything bigger or beyond just being a doodle. And I think, you know, that can be its own form of art. Just having a sketchbook of just miscellaneous art, like that in itself can be a project. But I felt like for me, that wasn't really what I wanted to do in life. And I just didn't really get any fulfillment out of it other than just having this gallery of unfinished art. So I just like that's kind of why I was just like, I need to go to a place that's going to start to hold me accountable and make me get things done. Cause I feel like when I don't have a schedule or any constraints, I feel like I end up just doing things so randomly and aimlessly that I don't know, it's like peaceful in the moment for me to do for sure. And it's relaxing when you can just put on some music and listen to a video and just draw whatever and have nothing bound to you about it. But then afterwards in the long term, I start to wonder, like, what am I doing all of this for? So yeah.
So, what motivates you? Like, you're one of those people that do like so many things at once, and usually those kinds of people, they're able to do all of these different things because they have a really strong reason why. So, what is that for you?
So for me, when I grew up, like I kind of grew up in an environment where, first of all, just to say for the record, my family is great. They are loving and that they have nothing to really do with this. But I feel like I grew up in an environment where emotions were not really encouraged or like they were often looked down upon. And like even in the schools that I went to, the teachers were always kind of jaded and the students were always just so focused on academics and like being sad or crying or like having any form of nuanced emotion is like weird to them. And I feel like just growing up, I've always wanted to have really close relationships with the friends that I built, but for some reason, no one ever really wanted that. But I also understand now that, you know, when you're young, you don't really know what you want and you kind of go out and explore different friendships and relationships, which leads to some friends just ditching friends. And I feel like emotions overall was a thing that I feel like made me that was looked down upon and I felt bad for having emotions sometimes. And art was kind of my only form of escape during that time to really think about things that made me feel something. And whenever I drew, I feel like I was finally able to voice the things I've wanted to say, because not only was like I felt like my emotions were being like repressed or anything, but I felt like just being able to talk to people was a struggle of mine. I had struggles just even communicating to people, which heavily links to what we were talking about earlier. I felt like I couldn't really put certain words in like into sentences. So drawing was my way of kind of expressing things that I wanted to say to people and how I felt.
I'm
So
sorry
drawing,
that it cut out.
oh
One more time.
sorry.
So, you were just talking about how art helped you release all those repressed emotions?
Yes. So art kind of helped me just communicate and release emotions that I felt were repressed. And I was also struggling just speaking as a young girl. Like what we said earlier, I had a fear of public speaking or just even talking to anyone in general. I was always shy. So speaking through art was my way of really knowing what it is I wanted to say, whether if it was about a societal issue or a self issue or mental health issue or anything like that. I felt like art was my way of telling others things that I've wanted to say. So I feel like my motivation kind of came as I was drawing more, because at first you kind of just are like, I love doing art. It just feels great when I draw and it turns out good. Okay. But then as time went on and I shared my art online, then that's when you see people say things like, your art really helped me get to do this in life. You really helped me overcome this. And I was like, I, I did that. What? Like, because I'm just drawing, but I didn't realize that whatever message I had in my art would really impact people in certain ways. But that's ultimately what animation is too, is like we're all creating these messages to help either better society or better certain issues that we see in our world or in individuals. And I feel like that was something that I really wanted to do with my art, as I saw it kind of coming to play with my own little audience that I was building on the internet. So I think just knowing the films that really got me to feel emotional about it, because they just had such a strong message that really motivates people. And especially in this day and age where I feel like there's just so much going on, I feel like we just need these reminders that, like, hey, this is a time to come together and work together, like things like that. It seems so corny, cheesy, and overly simple when I just say it like this, but when you see how animations, films, or art or music kind of expresses this in its art form, it's just like this entire experience that is more than just like the sentence that I'm blurting out. So I feel like working on a project like that to either help benefit society or just helping individuals feel better about themselves or their lives, or just doing something to help positively move something forward is like the least that I wish to do with my art, because I feel like just seeing how people normally just call art like not a real job, or just like just saying that it's not valid, I think it's such BS, because I'm like, you can't really feel motivation to do something until you have that emotional push to do so. And I feel like art, animation, film, music, like it all makes people feel emotions. And if we're going to put a message in it to do like something good for the world or good for yourself or good for someone you love, like that's gonna potentially be a way to help motivate someone else to do something. So I guess TLDR, like knowing that what I'm doing is going to help motivate someone else motivates me.
That's really cool. That kind of positivity and light definitely like shines through, especially in your comics.
Yeah, I just saw Raya and the Last Dragon this weekend.
Ooh.
I won't spoil it, but after
Yeah, please
watching
don't.
it,
I haven't watched it yet.
yeah, I was just like, well, yeah, this is why I want to do what I want to do.
Oh, that's awesome. When you encounter a problem, usually what's the first thought that comes to your head?
So when I encounter a problem, I think the first thing I'll feel is frustrated, just because problems can be annoying, but I'll acknowledge it. And then afterwards, I think I normally come up with a game plan of how to tackle it. So I guess it depends on what type of problem, because normally if it's something like the huge assignment that we talked about earlier, I'll just pull out my planner and just assign parts of it to work on each day throughout the week. But sometimes if it's something that's more like a story problem or something that's just one concept of a problem within a story that we have to solve or I have to solve for my own projects, I kind of just would approach it in different ways. Like first I would try to thumbnail it out to see how it plays out. Then I would write it out like a diary entry as if I'm the character and what I would do, because honestly, I feel like being genuine and authentic is going to be important when you're tackling problems.
Yeah, for sure. I do that with acting stuff
Yeah.
too.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So, I mean, yeah, things like that. I mean, is it the same for you then when you tackle problems?
Yeah, pretty much. I grew up being an artist first, and then public speaking, then acting.
Wow.
So it all kind of like ties in, like especially the stuff that you learn in acting. It's very like therapeutic because you have to use your own emotions to do it out. So it's really easy to, like how you said, get into the mind of another person and see that universally we all kind of just want the same things.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think that's just one of the things that's just really beautiful about art, animation, or any form of art, is that at the end of the day, it all kind of comes back to just being a human and just the psychology behind it. And it's not like you have to do some crazy math or anything to figure out how to solve it, which is why I'm not in computer science or anything like that, because I'm much more better at, figuring out emotions and reasonings behind why people do things. I'm not a pro at it for sure, but just, understanding character motivations is just honestly therapeutic for myself too. So
Yeah, for sure. What were you scared of at the start of your career, and has that changed?
at the start of my career, I think I was really afraid of not being accepted. I think everyone has some level of imposter syndrome. And I think looking back now, I feel so silly about feeling that way, but I still do have some level of imposter syndrome for sure. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. And sometimes I think it's okay that it exists, and sometimes it's annoying that it exists. But I feel like when I first entered the industry, one of my biggest fears was just like, oh, I feel afraid of if I reached out to an industry professional or if I worked under someone that I admired, but they just thought I was stupid or unskilled and they just think that I'm a bad artist and wonder why I'm here. I don't know why. Like, I was always afraid to go up to people in the industry that I admired, because at CalArts we had all these guest talks and stuff like that. And by the end of every talk, students would go up to the person who came and just like ask them questions or just ask for a quick autograph or doodle, which I think is, if you have an opportunity like that at your school where you can just be that intimate with a guest speaker, that's awesome. But I never took advantage of it, which I wish I did more of. But for some reason, I was just always afraid of like, oh, if I go up to the guest speaker, they're just going to view me as just this silly little student that just wants attention and just
Oh,
to get more information. I don't know why my brain always went to that direction, but I feel like my self-esteem in general was so low. Like, I never thought about that about other students
yeah,
either,
I
by
was
the
just
way.
about to ask, when you
Yeah.
do like panels at like Lightbox and stuff, when people come up to you like at your booth or whatever, when they ask you stuff, I don't think
No,
you
yeah, the
think
thing
that.
is, I wouldn't think that at all. Like, I'm always just like, wow, like I aspire to have your enthusiasm and your courage to even like come here and just go talk to so many people. But I think again, everything for me always rooted back to my fear of just speaking or putting myself out there or talking to people. Like, I literally have a demon inside my head that's just like, what makes you think you're so good to go up and ask these questions? But like, that's just a demon that you just have to shoo away and be like, okay, sit down, Michelle number two, or
That's
whoever.
one of Sorry, that's one of the
No,
things that
go
I
on.
really admire about you because like you wouldn't know it like from your YouTube channel and all your videos and stuff that you struggle with that, but I really admire that you keep like it's a scary fear. It really is. So that you keep facing it over and over again. Have you found that
Yeah.
has the fear like you said, it doesn't go away, but has it do you now know to ignore it, or has it gotten smaller some way?
Yeah, so I feel like I've definitely been better at ignoring it because the feeling does always come back, especially whenever you're hopping onto a new production, you're introduced to a new studio and a new team, and you kind of have to go through the whole process of just reproving yourself. Because once you work on a project, your team members get to really familiarize themselves with who you are and your work, and they'll be like, wow, you're a great artist. Great job, Michelle, blah, blah, blah. And but then, like, after that, when you move on to a new project, you're kind of reintroduced to all of these people that you don't know, and they don't really know you yet. They kind of just know you based off of your interview and just your portfolio. So you kind of have to reprove to them, like, hey, I am someone who's capable of doing this, and you have nothing to worry about if you have me on your team. So, like, it's just you have to go through that whole process of proving that to them again. But it's just like, I feel like as each project like comes, you kind of get used to it because you're just like, I've done this before, I can do it again. It's just now with different people. And sometimes, like, during critiques or like feedback sessions, they might sometimes say things that might make you feel like, oh, like, I don't want you to get that assumption of me, like that I will always be making that mistake or something like that. And sometimes that can get into your mind a little bit too much if you overthink it, but that's why I try to make myself not think about stuff as much anymore. Because the thing is, like, during feedback sessions, people will say things about your art that might make you question yourself or make you question your decisions. Like, but the thing is that these things always happen no matter what studio or production you go to. Nothing is ever entirely your fault. There's a whole pipeline that you can trace back to the root of the issue, and the root of the issue is not going to be just like one person's fault. Like, unless if you're someone who's really just being disruptive and like negative and just actually negatively impacting everyone and the studio, then yeah, that's a problem, but that's another thing. But in terms of just your work and just making sure that you're doing your best, that's all you should really worry about. And any voices that you get in your head that say like, oh, the director said this about your work during this one shot, this means you're shit, that's the voice that you need to silence. Because at the end of the day, everyone is going to be making mistakes on the team. Even the leader of the team is going to be making their own mistakes. But at the end of the day, no one is going to really overthink your mistake and be like, oh my gosh, this one artist, Michelle, she's such a bad worker. No one sits there and overthinks that stuff. So it's like, then why should you overthink that stuff if no one else is? So just deep breaths and just get back to work. And yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. What was important to you back then, and has that changed at the start of your career?
Yeah. So honestly, it was really funny because before I graduated, I actually was reached out to someone if I was interested in pitching one of my films to a studio as like a show or something. But I still agreed to reach out to them and meet up for the coffee or lunch. But when they were talking to me, I was just like, no, I just really want to be a storyboard artist. Like, I just really want to just do storyboarding. Like, I didn't really want to do anything beyond that at that time. So when I first graduated, I think I was just really focused on wanting to just live a comfortable life, just storyboarding. And I think that is great. And honestly, I still want to have that life to some degree. But also, I think I realized that after I started my first job and then I started making comics on Instagram, where I was able to just kind of do the thing that I actually wanted to do, which was kind of communicating something through my art that could help motivate or move people in a positive way. I felt like, if I want to do something like that, maybe I might have to start thinking about directing, or maybe get into pitching ideas and maybe eventually run a show or direct a film, or just doing something where, hey, this project was made kind of pretty much like the idea came up from me, but I was able to help lead a team to help carry that idea forward, and then ultimately have this whole team working on this one project that can spread this positive message to the world. I feel like that was something that I eventually learned I wanted to do, which is why directing eventually became an interest of mine, because I was like, hey, it's kind of like I don't know if you've ever seen this film called Ip Man. It's about like a martial artist in Hong Kong who he kind of kept his power to himself and he didn't really think about teaching others his powers. But then later on, he decided to teach others how to do martial arts just like him. And then from then on, it kind of spreads throughout everyone else. And that's kind of something that I want to do now too, where it's like I want to be able to either lead like my own team and be able to help people become better artists or direct on their own or just be better at communicating what they want to say through their art. But of course, in the workplace, if you want to have that opportunity, you need to work up to be in a place of leadership that you can even do that. And then on my own time, like I like to make those comics on Instagram or try to make YouTube videos that kind of help encourage young aspiring artists. You don't even have to be in art because I feel like you can always replace art with whatever else it is you want to do. And it's just the similar concepts that you apply. And yeah, just doing something like that, I realized that being a storyboard artist, like it can be helpful. Like maybe I could just keep staying being a board artist right now and just keep doing comics and videos. But I feel like there's just something about it that, you know, there's still other lands I want to explore in the world of directing and show creating and just see where that goes first before deciding, oh, I just want to stay a board artist or something like that. And again, there's nothing wrong with just wanting to stay a storyboard artist at all. I think for me, I just am the type who just wants to see how something else goes first to decide if I just want to stay being a certain thing. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
It was
that's
very
really, really
complex.
interesting. I have a question about that. Like how do you know that you're not boxing yourself into, oh, I'm a storyboard artist, I'm just gonna do storyboards, versus like genuinely, oh, I'm fine with doing storyboards. But one is motivated by fear that like if I only do storyboards, I don't think I can do anything else. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that if you catch yourself having moments daydreaming or just thinking about being something more, like, oh, I want to direct or run my own show or pitch my own short film idea to insert studio name someday, I feel like that's kind of an inkling that maybe you kind of want to explore that path someday. So I think like that's when you know maybe you're being a little bit held back by your comfortable state of being a board artist is when you keep noticing that you're wanting to do these things and you keep thinking about it, but then you kind of try to make yourself repress it. But I feel like you should try to go for it. If you really keep feeling these emotions about this thing, like why not just try? Like you don't have to succeed in every step. Like when you pitch a show, it's not like you have to just keep pitching shows. It could just be something you do every once in a while and see what happens. And if it doesn't, well, you just got another experience up your sleeve. So that's kind of one of the things that I think is what at least I noticed for myself is that I thought I just wanted to be a board artist and I would just be like, well, I like my life just being a board artist, right? And then I would go home, but then watch other shows and experience life and just be like, wow, I really wish I could have like a project where I can talk about what I'm gaining from all of these experiences and just putting it into a thing. But I know as a board artist, I can't just do that because you're helping with somebody else's idea. So the only way to really do that and to make a career out of that is if I was interested in directing or moving up somehow. So, but I feel like there are some things about being a board artist that, you know, this is probably, if you think you know that this is just all you want to do for your life, is maybe you have other interests outside of animation that you want to pursue other things. Like maybe you want to be a kickboxing coach or something like that actually. But then storyboarding is kind of a thing where you still really love your job storyboarding and you love this career, and at the same time, at the same time you envision yourself growing in something else. Like I feel like everyone at the end of the day wants to grow to some degree in some area of their life, and I feel like just because your career is art doesn't mean that that's the thing that you have to be progressing in or something like that, because you could just still enjoy storyboarding, but you gain that satisfaction of growing, like elsewhere, if whether it's a sport or some other hobby that you're deeply pursuing in, and that's kind of where you're growing in how someone else would be growing as from a storyboard artist to a director. Like maybe you're getting that feeling somewhere else. And for me, I feel like it was just a thing like ever since I was little where I just made my own stories and comics and just would show it to my family members and just be like, read my story out loud, or like, look at this animation I made, and make them watch it. I feel like that is ultimately kind of what made me feel like at the end of the day, I want to just be able to produce some sort of animated or art related project that is just my own. And I know in order to gain that title, I have to work my way to be something that will allow me that leadership position.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good
Hmm.
mindset to have. This kind of ties in with that. Um, do you have a dream goal or job or project or like an end goal? Or is it more about the journey for you?
I feel like I'm aware that even if I set an end goal, I know that once I reach it, we'll go down that paradox of like, okay, I did it. Now I'm like, what's next? I feel like I'm starting to learn to appreciate the journey more. And I feel like just just living in this moment and just being like, hey, you're doing something that your younger self didn't even really envision yourself doing. It's just, well, it's like my younger self wanted to be doing this, but it was so hard for me to even imagine that I could be in this position. Like just really soaking that in allows me to appreciate the journey, but also just remembering to diversify the things I do in my day-to-day life. It's like I'm not just drawing, I'm going out and doing things like having this job as just a storyboard artist is allowing me to live a life outside of it as well. Like I can go on many trips with my family and friends and just experience different things around the world because of it. So that kind of helps me appreciate the journey and just life outside of animation. And I guess in terms of the end goal, I'll always have like this vision of, oh, I want to direct this project someday. I want to create this show someday. I want to publish this book someday. I feel like that's always going to be a thing, but I feel like I just stopped viewing them as end goals because I realized that, hey, I'm just going to work on this project. And once, if I ever get it at the end of the day, I know I'm just going to end back in this circle of being like, okay, well, now that I worked on this project, what's next? I want to work on this other project now. So I feel like I've been training myself to stop focusing on, some career end goal and just kind of making my end goal just more like being at peace with where I am as the end goal, because I feel like I just hate feeling stressed all the time about where I should be by the time I'm 50 or where I should be by the time I'm 60. Well, if I focus on just being happy with where I am now and appreciating what my current position is allowing me to do, then by the time I'm 50 or 60, I'll never have to think about my end goal and feel stressed about it again.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that changed like what you feel is important to you now?
Yeah, so I feel like right now, one of the things that is the most important to me is just living a balanced life and just being able to move forward with all aspects of my life. Like, I don't want to just be just an artist that's just known for doing her thing. I kind of want to be known for promoting a healthier lifestyle, because I also grew up with a family that was not like as educated in the whole physical health and like health world. So like we had a lot of like health complications with a lot of our family members where it's like, if we only knew this earlier, we could have prevented this. So I feel like stress also deeply runs in my family. So I'm trying to be better at managing that. And I feel like overall being better at managing and balancing things like just, your hobbies outside of art, or your health, your physical health, or just learning things that are not art related, or just things out of just curiosity and interest, and traveling the world are things that ultimately help balance out my deep, intense desire to succeed in the career world. So I feel like at least focusing on other things helps me stop being so crazily obsessed about job related stuff, or like having these things dictate my mental health or my, I don't know, my self-esteem, because at some point art was kind of like the only thing I really identified myself as. And I realized that, you know, just being known as an artist only shouldn't really be the only thing that you should be known for in your life. Like you should be also known as a good person and just someone that just actually helped do good and promote good stuff. So yeah, did that answer your question? I kind of got
Yeah.
like carried away.
No, 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 it's really good. Definitely like that's a really, really good mindset to have. When is the last time that you created without fear, and how did that affect your work?
So I guess the last time I created something without fear was, I guess right now, before I did this interview, I was doing another spread in my sketchbook where on my YouTube channel, I do these things called draw with me's, where I kind of just take the time to draw a spread in my sketchbook because it's something that I never do anymore. But when I was at school or before I went to school, I feel like doing sketchbooks was kind of like my thing. I loved just having these finished books of art that I just did. And I feel like I never did that anymore. But on my YouTube channel, it's kind of like very, it's like stressful in the fact that I would like to upload weekly, but it's also not stressful because I'm just like, this is kind of more of my hobby. This is kind of more of like something that I do on my own accord. There's nobody really judging me, and I can kind of just talk about my own thing in the videos. So just drawing the spread while knowing that no one is really going to be caring about this other than myself is really therapeutic to know. And it's just, I don't know, just being able to draw traditionally and just making mistakes, knowing that there's no undo button and you kind of have to just live with it, also relieves a lot of stress in the drawing aspect of it. But I guess just having, if you are an artist and your career is doing art, I guess remembering to keep some form of artistic hobby outside of it is a way to help you manage that fear or stress that you might have in your day-to-day life, because you do have that safe space to go to at the end of the day where you're like, I can still draw and feel unjudged and unstressed in this place. Because I feel like when art becomes your job and only your job, then it can kind of, you know, ruin it for you as a hobby or what it originally was as a passion. And I feel like, I don't know, that's just kind of, it can be sad, but, you know, I would like to fight that and just keep a place where art is still a therapeutic resource for me.
Yeah, definitely. I love your draw with me videos. I was really, really inspired by growing up, like 12, 13.
Oh my,
You're you have like the sketchbook, but it's I can't say it because this channel is like it's for
yeah.
kids. But yeah, but I made my own like anti-sketchbook kind of thing inspired off of your
Oh,
ideas, and that's so true because yeah, especially like when it's like your job or something, it can definitely affect like how you feel about it.
yeah, for sure. And I think I know what sketchbook you're talking about, but having a sketchbook like that is definitely very helpful with just knowing your intentions of just being like, this is a place for me to make mistakes. This is a place for me to mess up, and who cares, because we all make bad art at some point, and this is just the place for it if you want to see it. And yeah, I feel like just keeping it real with knowing that we all make mistakes and even presenting it in the form of a sketchbook kind of just makes it less pressuring, because the more it's just real that we all make mistakes, the less it's a pressuring factor in our lives. Because I feel like no one really talks about that before. Like in the past, it's more like people don't talk about like the things that they do wrong. People don't really talk about their mistakes. They just want to show the finished product. But I feel like nowadays we're kind of more about authenticity and just being real with everyone. And making bad art is part of the process of making good art. And that's the truth.
Yeah, for sure. There's this quote that I really love. It's by Austin Kleon. He says, "All advice is autobiographical." What do you wish you were taught? Or through your videos and comics, what are you trying to, I don't know, like remind yourself or your past self?
Um, so I guess like how is the work I'm making like trying to tell something to my past self?
Yeah, like in the quote, he talks about how whenever somebody like gives you advice, they're really just telling like a past version of themselves what they wish that they kind of did.
Ah, yeah, for sure. So I think a part of what I do now that's trying to help others or my past self is, I mean, this sounds so basic, but it's kind of like just be how should I word this? Be yourself unapologetically, but of course like that comes with terms and conditions because you can always make a really big bad mistake, and in that case yes, please apologize. But in terms of just being yourself and just telling the world that you love yogurt with blueberries or something as random as that is something that I feel like you should just say and not care about. It's kind of like the story about how I didn't want to tell a story in front of my class, but it's just like you should still just go up there and tell a story, even if it's about this really good food you had recently. Like, how did that feel to you? Describe the flavor of the cheese and how it melted in your. That's like a story. You're just talking about a food, but to you, it meant something else when you were experiencing it. And that experience is a story. So I think all stories are valid if you want to just express it in a way that is in your own style and or something like that. So that's kind of what I feel like my art is trying to tell others is that, I might tell a story about this UTI I had, which is a urinary tract infection, which to others, they might be like, what? What is that? Or I've never had one of those. But to me, this is my truth. This is what I experience like almost all the time. Thankfully, I haven't had one in a while, but crossing fingers that it doesn't happen again. But I feel like just something like that is just a normal thing that happens to me. I didn't expect like other people to be like so amazed that someone would just open up about it. But you would be surprised that just by being yourself and just saying something random in your life, how many people out there actually relate to it and find comfort in the fact that someone else out there feels exactly the same as we do, even if it's something as simple as just talking about blueberry yogurt or food. I don't know. So yeah, I think that's something that is just like, even if you're afraid of speaking up, if you're afraid of telling a story, like you're probably just afraid because you don't know what the reception is going to be and how might people might perceive you. But the thing is, whatever you're about to say is that most likely someone else out there is going to relate to it to some in some way. So don't be afraid to share it.
Yeah, for sure. That's really good advice. Is there a project or not necessarily art related, but is there like a project or something that you're putting off because of fear?
Yeah, there is for sure. I feel like I can't tell right now if it's fear or time management because there's a project that I've been thinking about, but obviously I won't say it now since I myself don't even know what it entirely is. I kind of just have a vague concept of it, but I feel like with other things going on, like my main job right now as an assistant director, which is a position that I've kind of been wanting for a while, and just working on these comics on the side. And on this, I'm also in the midst of publishing my first graphic novel, which is really awesome. And just working on these YouTube videos. Like I feel like on a day-to-day basis, my schedule is pretty full. It doesn't have to be full, but I kind of make it full. And I'm just like, but there's this other thing I want to do too. Should I do it or should I not? And then I kind of come back to the question of like, well, all of these things that you're doing right now, like your assistant director gig, your graphic novel, these Instagram comics, your YouTube, these were all things that your past self also said, like, this is something I really want to do. Should I do it? And I feel like there's a time and place where you take care of what you have right now. And then maybe when this idea is fully developed, maybe I can tackle it. But I mean, I do agree that one of the reasons why I'm not tackling it now is because I'm afraid of just how it could throw everything off that I'm already doing right now. And maybe right now is not the right time for it. But I think if maybe I hold the promise to myself that I will do this as soon as I get like these important current things out of the way, then I'll take care of it. Because, there are some people out there who are just like, don't don't hesitate, just do it, just do it. But then at the same time you're like, what if like there are things that I've also wanted to do like in the past and I finally got the chance to do it now. It's not like I'm going to just suddenly throw it all away for this new job or this new project. It's kind of like friendships. It's like you have your close friends, but you're not going to just throw them away all of a sudden the moment a new person comes in. So I'm kind of just trying to be careful, I guess, right now with just making sure that if I do want to take on this project, maybe it will have to be at a time where I have put to rest some of the more important ones that I'm doing now, in which my past self has always been wanting to do and had the same exact emotion I'm having right now about this new project for.
How do you decide to prioritize that?
Yeah, so it's really funny because I actually had this conversation with someone else too, who was just like, when you have a really great idea, do you ever just want to spontaneously do it right now and drop everything else you're doing it? Because sometimes doesn't it just come out better when you just get the chance to do it on the spot? And like to some degree, I think, yeah, that's possible for some projects, but for something like if you want to pitch an idea to a studio or publish a book or make some huge like Kickstarter pilot or something like that, that requires a lot of time and energy. And I think like sometimes we do have to be realistic with ourselves about, are you going to drop everything that you're doing right now for this thing? Because there might be some things that I'm working on right now that I feel like are, I guess, the levels that I have to complete in order to get to the next level, kind of like a video game. Like some of the further levels are still unlocked because you still have to complete levels 2 and 3 to get to level 4. And I do think like at least when it comes to the directorial position that I'm at and like publishing this graphic novel, these are things that I've really wanted to do for a while. And I feel like I should do them to the best of my ability and not be so flaky with everything just because a new idea comes up. And I think like if anything, the best that you can do if you're in a position like that where you're in the middle of actually pursuing the dream that you've longed to have, but then another dream comes up, you can just put a bookmark on it and then come back to it later. Like you don't have to do everything right now, in my opinion. I think that some things take time to marinate in your brain before you can really take action onto them. So it's not like you can't touch it at all, because maybe you can just leave a bookmark on it, but while you're doing your other jobs, you can still spend the nights just writing out ideas for it. You can just lightly brainstorm it in a way that it's not taking away from the things that you're doing now. But I also think that it's okay to want to focus on whatever you have on your plate right now, if what you have on your plate right now is really that important to you.
Yeah, definitely. It's easy to get into that mindset of like speed running life.
Yeah, because for sure, I feel like in a perfect world, we would be able to do everything that we've always wanted to do. But, it's always going to be about balancing it out and making sure that the sacrifices you're making are the ones that you actually want to make.
Yeah, definitely. What's something that you went through all this process of like thinking of how you can fail and being scared and all that stuff. What's something that you failed at and what happened after?
Yeah, so I guess depends on what failure means, because some people can say there's no such thing as failure at the end of the day. But I guess for me, my definition of failure for this will just be like, I wanted to do something and it didn't follow through. So I feel like, so during my first year at working at Netflix, I actually wanted to just pitch a show idea and just see where it goes. I kind of went in knowing that nothing's going to happen just because I feel like, I just entered the industry. I just started my first job. I'm just doing this for the first time. How could I really even get anything accepted by executives? But I kind of knew that if I wanted to even do this in the future where I'm pitching again, I still have to put my foot in the water and just get familiarized with what it's like to be in this world where I'm developing a pitch and pitching to executives. So, in a way, like some people might debate that this is not failure because I was expecting failure, but I was trying to also do my best to work on the pitch in a way that, I'm doing my best to just make it potentially go through or get it accepted. And of course, after I pitched it, the pitch in general went well, but that doesn't always mean it's going to go through, because when it comes to a studio, you have to always take into consideration like just the timeline of things. Maybe people aren't looking for a show like yours at this time in life, maybe later. But then also another thing is just like taking into account, like, have you really had any leadership skills? Have you really had the time to, sorry, I'm like losing my voice.
That's okay. We
But
can take a break if you need.
no, it's okay. But it's like you have to question like the amount of experience that you've had, and if it's reasonable for you to even lead a really big project with the certain amount of experience that you've had. And I think it's okay to just go in through that stuff not having the proper experience, because you're giving yourself the experience by having this first pitch experience in front of executives. So after I had the pitch, it didn't go through as expected, but no one shamed me from doing it. No one was just like, that was bad, don't ever do that again. So I don't really view it as failure in a long-term sense, but for that one time thing where I wanted to pitch something and hope that it would go through and it didn't go through, like that in itself is kind of like a failure, but not in a bad way, of course. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That personally, like, because I do acting and stuff, that reminds me of like, the process of auditioning and how many times you get rejected and things. It's a really good thing to like build yourself up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's good humbling reminders, because there are going to be like those few people who are, once every blue moon just get into a very big leadership position without like much industry experience. But maybe they don't need that industry experience because they might have gone through something in life that gives them that ability to be in that position, rightfully so. And like at the end of the day, everyone just has their own upbringing and story, and not everyone's going to be on the same path. And whatever experiences you ultimately go through, whether it's going through multiple jobs in order to get your first directing career, or going through no jobs but having all of this other life experience to getting that directorial position, like it's all going to fall into place and ultimately be the best for you in that scenario.
That's really comforting. Um,
Yeah.
what helped you to get out of your personal comfort zone?
Well, for me, it kind of just started back in like not middle school, high school, where I knew I wanted to go to CalArts, but I was just like, if I want to go to this school, I can't just keep drawing anime and girls. I have to really branch out. So I think when I came to that realization, I was just like, I have to start drawing other things. I can't just draw anime. I can't draw girls. I have to draw landscapes, environments, people in environments, realism, blah, blah, blah. So since I had a few years, I think I had maybe 2 to 3 years before actually going to CalArts or even applying to CalArts, I was just like, okay, I need to start familiarizing myself with just drawing things that I don't normally draw. And it was kind of annoying because of course you would always rather be drawing things that you like drawing instead of things that you don't, because I'm not the biggest fan of drawing cars or huge city environments, things that are very structural. But I knew that if I had to do this, something that you're going to have to try. So I just kind of had to bite the bullet and do it. And it's it's much easier said than done, but of course there's going to be a lot of motivation and discipline involved, where you're going to have to be like, okay, on Saturday at 8 a.m. I'm going to wake up, pull up a video of cars driving around and just pausing at each frame and drawing the cars. That's kind of like what it came down to, because I knew that if I gave myself like no schedule or no designated time to do this, I'm just always going to put it off because I hate drawing cars and vehicles. But if I was like, Michelle, you got to do this on Saturday at 8 a.m., I'll do it. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Did you have anyone that helped you or encouraged you and helped you like overcome fear?
yeah. So, I mean, like I said, my friends back at home really helped me a lot, especially with the whole public speaking thing. But I feel like just the people that will help you the most are the people that you realize you kind of took for granted at first, because you might enter the industry thinking like, oh, I can only learn from the greatest animator or storyboard artist out there, which is true. You can still definitely learn a lot from them. But I think in terms of your mentality towards things and just how you're going to approach art or making art or pursuing your career, I feel like that's going to come through a lot through the people that you spend time around the most. And that could be your classmates or your friends and family. And for me, that was definitely my friends and family, because I feel like I hung around people that were very career driven or very long term goal driven, in which I didn't realize, but I think that's ultimately why we're still friends to this day, because we view things long term. So having those people around me just allowed me to never give up in what it is I wanted to do. Because I feel like you can always get advice on how to draw better hands, better eyes, how to draw things anatomically correct. But I feel like if you don't have that foundational desire to just keep going despite how hard things are going to be, it's going to be so difficult for you to get through all those anatomy classes, those figure drawing classes and everything, if you don't even have that backbone motivation to even want to stick through all of this. So I think just hanging around people who really are motivated and disciplined to want to get things done and just keep moving forward is kind of more important than hanging around people who are just really good at just knowing things about the skill itself. And that's not to like downplay any industry professionals, because I think industry professionals also have a lot to say with like your long-term goals and like your career and things like that. But in terms of realistically who I'm going to be hanging around each day, it's not like every day I get to sit with Glenn Keane and be like, yeah, so give me life advice. The people that you'll hang around the most are going to be your family and friends. So they're hopefully the ones that can give you some positive motivation to keep going in what it is you want to do. And if they don't support you, then you know that they're not someone that you should really look up to.
That's really good advice.
Hmm.
One thing that I really love is that you openly like teach other people like through your YouTube channel, and I know it takes a lot of work on top of like everything that
Yeah.
you're already doing. You're helping people, and that's something that I really admire. Um, what motivates you to continue to teach and help others? Like, what made you want to help people, and what do you hope people will learn from you?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I think you probably noticed too, because I also made a little survey being like, what do you guys want me to make more videos of? Just please don't make it a how-to drawing video or request or something like that. Because again, I feel like when it comes to art and drawing, I'm more about the mindset, the motivation, the discipline, the inspiration factor to keep driving artists. I feel like maybe one day in the future, I'll do a how to draw hands, how to draw bodies, or anatomical stuff. I feel like that stuff is really great to know, but I feel like there are already so many great resources for that out there that I don't want to really just regurgitate that stuff. I feel like for me, one of the things that really inspired me is I once had a friend who I'm no longer friends with today, but they really suffered with depression and viewing positively about their art, or even like feeling motivated to keep going with their art. But I think it's kind of like working out, is you can't just go in just suddenly doing an intense workout where you're suddenly out of breath as your first workout ever, for if you want to have a fit routine or something like that. You have to go into things slowly and be okay with yourself throughout the whole process, but also be reasonably challenging with yourself. Like you can't just be like, oh, you're doing great, sweetie, and then just never improve. But you also can't be like, you suck, you are never going to be better, because then you'll probably not want to keep doing it anymore. So I think one of the things I like to just remind viewers is that when you start doing something, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to just not do everything great, because my friend who had depression, like they literally could not do anything. They couldn't even get themselves to draw. And I feel like that's one of the first things that you really need to do if you want to improve your art, is the ability to want to draw. Like there are so many days where even I myself don't want to draw, and I think that's okay. But I think if this is something that you want to pursue, but you find yourself feeling the difficulty to even want to hold a pencil and lay it down, then how are you going to even get through the how to draw hands? How are you going to even get to the how to line art, how to animate stuff if you can't get the motivation to draw in the first place? So I think that's kind of like my message for my channel is kind of just inspiring people to even want to pick up the pencil in the first place. Like, we can always find tutorials on the internet from someone else, and probably someone even more skilled than me. But in terms of just finding that desire to draw and wanting to stay committed to it, I feel like I might have some good things to say for it just from my personal experience. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really love about your channel and that kind of like inspired me to start doing like these interviews and my own channel, especially these interviews because I think, like usually just people ask you like how to draw X, Y, or Z, but what's really important is like the mindsets of these people. And that's something that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like I could go on for hours about this stuff, but it's just I like it can be a lot. So yeah.
One of the things, all the stuff that you're doing, like the shows and the graphic novels and these YouTube videos, have like real life consequences, right? Like for example, when I was 12, I found out what a storyboard artist was like through your Tumblr and your Instagram
Wow.
and
Oh
stuff.
my gosh, 12.
Yeah, yeah, I know
I
it's
didn't even know
crazy.
what a board artist was at 12.
Yeah, so that's how like I was kind of set on this path because somebody else like just put their stuff out there and was able to like teach people. And most people know how like on-camera stuff works, but storyboard artists have to be, they have to be like the actor, the writer, the cinematographer, all those jobs in like once. By making the process of animation through what you're doing like more common knowledge, you're really helping like open the doors for other young
Mhm.
artists. So, I'm wondering how has your relationship with doing that changed and how does that sense of responsibility or obligation affect your mindset and the art that you create?
I see. Yeah. So I would definitely say in the beginning, I kind of made more stuff that was very indulgent for myself and not really as focused on others. It was like I felt like I really wanted to say something to others to help others, but I didn't really realize it yet. And I was just kind of being myself. Like, I'm kind of like even ashamed to admit this, but in a lot of my old videos, I just kind of had videos of just me pretty much cursing at my younger self's old art where I'm just like, this is bleep. This is, how could you make this bleep? And I'm just like overly criticizing my younger self's art to the top, where I even got some comments from others who were just like, why are you cursing so much? Like, can you chill? Like, is that your only language? And to some degree, I like agree with them because I'm just like, wow, I really cursed a lot when I was younger. But also, I like, in my defense, I felt like this was just my gateway to even allowing myself to put myself out there at first, because I felt like if I over worried about the way that I spoke, if I keep nitpicking on every single thing that I ever did before uploading a video, well, I probably would have never uploaded this video. Um, I never directed any of like my language to anyone else other than myself and just my past artwork. But it's also like something that kind of goes to show that I was, for some reason, I had such a bad mentality towards like the way that I drew, and like, why do I hate my art so much? Why do I hate like my younger self's creation so much? Like, you were 12, you were 13. Why would you, like, you were still growing up? Why are you being so, why are you expecting yourself to be Picasso when you're 13? So I think like having that realization made me realize like, hey, then why don't you just have other people help them realize that they're not thinking like you? Like, if I thought like that about my art at that age, like, I can only imagine who else is thinking about that stuff about their own art. And I feel like that kind of changed the message that I wanted to bring on my YouTube, from me just opening my old sketchbooks and just criticizing myself, to now kind of educating others about like how to view your art in a reasonable way and not hate yourself over it, because it's just a drawing, it's just a part of you, it's not your entirety. And Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, yeah. How does that sense of responsibility or obligation affect your mindset and the art that you create?
Yeah, so I think that definitely kind of made me realize that, okay, some people view you as a role model now. And now, whenever you make things, you should kind of take others into consideration, which is kind of why I stopped cursing or using this vulgar language because I knew that someone else out there might look at this and think that it's okay to say that about themselves or to others. And I was just like, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this, because some people would be like, oh, you're so great, just being yourself, go you. But at the same time, it's like, yes, I had my moment of being that version of myself, but I think it's time to just move on and actually use what I intended in those videos for good now. Like, so that's why I think whenever I make content now, I try to keep it as a balance of what is something I want to do and what others want to see. Because I feel like if I cater too much towards people, sarcastic or silly or something
I'm
like that.
sorry, it cut out again.
Oh, sorry. What
You were right at finding the balance between your art, making art that you want to see, and making art that other people want to see.
Yeah, so that's just kind of like how I keep things in mind right now, is just knowing that if I do something too much catered towards people, I feel like people will see through it and just not be as interested, because you're just going to be a blob of what everyone else wants if you're not, your own personality. But of course, when you're your own personality and you're not really taking into others into consideration, and you're just only talking about yourself and focusing on yourself and just making everything about you, that can be a turn off to others as well. So I try to just make sure that when I have content, it's just like, oh, this is something that maybe others can find some usefulness in, whether if it's relatability or some advice that I can pass on to them, or just a place for them to chill and relax when they watch my videos or read my comics. And then the part behind it is just like my personality. Like, this is how I'm going to tell this video in the style of, like, I probably wouldn't tell a how to become a storyboard artist the same way as like an animation industry veteran from years ago, just because like we come from different walks of life. And I always knew that when I was younger, I wanted to see someone that entered the industry at a young age and kind of just talked about their job on YouTube like all these other people are. Like when you see a day in the life of a computer science person or a day in the life of an engineer. Like, I love seeing those occupational jobs with people just talking about their a day in their life, but they're still kind of young. So people in high school or middle school can easily see themselves in them a little bit easier than someone who's kind of been in the industry for over 50 years. Like, I feel like there's just such a huge gap that things might be different between them. So things don't work the same. But for me and my viewers, I hope that maybe things are still a little bit relevant enough for them to be like, oh, so if this is how you did it, I can probably do that too. Because when I used to listen to podcasts about like animation veterans, they literally walked up to the studio with their portfolios and was like, here, check it out. Can you please hire me? And that's how things worked. But nowadays, it's not like that. You have Instagram, you have online portfolios, you have like an online presence and stuff that you should, tend to if you're going to be in the industry. So there's just a lot of different nuances that I hope that now someone like me can help others with by sharing that information while just being myself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What is the most fearless thing that you've ever done?
The most fearless thing I've ever done? Uh, honestly,
It
I
doesn't have
can't.
to be art related.
Okay. The most fearless thing I've ever done, honestly, it's going to be so hard to say, because anytime I go through something so intensely stressful, I feel like I like to bury it to the back of my brain so I never remember it anymore. But hmm, the most fearless thing I've ever done was probably when we were on a trip in the Bahamas with my family. And this was like a post graduation trip to celebrate me graduating high school. So we were on a scuba trip or something on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and my dad doesn't know how to swim. So he was in the ocean, but I don't know why his life jacket wasn't working, and he was starting to like he wasn't drowning, but he was struggling to swim and he could drown if no one saved him. But the lifeguard or the person on our boat, I think, was also busy tending to other people who were scuba or snorkeling somewhere else. So I was on the boat and I saw my dad struggling. And I don't know why I was still on the boat. Maybe I didn't intend to snorkel in this specific location. So I was still like in my clothes. I had like my sunglasses and my makeup on and everything. I just jumped off the boat and I dived into the ocean and I like had to bring my dad back to like safety on the boat and stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh, are these people even doing their job? I should be the lifeguard on this boat. So yeah, that was like one of the most like craziest things I think I've done, just because like I'm not afraid of the ocean, but I kind of am at the same time. Like when I'm on the surface level, it's okay, but thinking about the ocean's abyss kind of freaks me out and I like to
Oh
stay
yeah,
away
same.
from it as possible. So like the fact that I had to go in the ocean and just like save my dad was just, oh, like just thinking like I know it's important to save my dad, but when I think about the octopuses and like creepy sea creatures, I'm just like,
Yeah, no, that's really like adrenaline inducing. That's like
yeah, that's yeah.
that's like modern like Little Mermaid hardcore.
I know. Little Mermaid, except this time I'm the human.
What would you say to someone who struggles with fear in their own art?
If you struggle with fear in your own art, I think maybe find a way to embrace the fear or the reasons why you're afraid. Like, I think a common reason is that people are like, oh, I'm afraid it's going to look bad and people are going to judge me for it looking bad or something like that. Then maybe you should embrace the bad parts of it. Like the thing that we talked about with making a sketchbook just full of bad drawings. That's something that you should just do. Like have a place that you're aware of. This is where you're going to make all the mistakes that make you afraid to proceed in drawing, just so that I feel like once you confront that and when others can see that you're confronting that, you're just like, okay, well, you've all seen the worst of me now, so I guess there's really nothing worse that I could do. Because if I just show a sketchbook full of really scribbly thumbnails and doodles that are not as pretty and clear as my other drawings, it's just like, well, that's as bad it's going to get. So I guess I shouldn't, like, you kind of overcame that fear to some degree because you've shown it to everyone, you showed it to yourself, you made a whole sketchbook just about your bad drawings. Okay, now we're all over it. Now what?
Yeah, that's awesome. Also, like making bad art is sometimes just really fun to do.
Yeah, exactly. Bad art normally feels better than making pretty art anyway. And the thing is that honestly, all artists will be able to relate to it too. So it's just like, why don't be afraid of something that everybody else experiences? Like everyone feels bad about their art at some point. Everyone else makes bad drawings at some point too. So if you like, there should be no fear in you making bad art or being afraid of making art because you're going through what everybody else is going through.
Yeah, for sure. What is a common myth that young artists usually have about the animation industry?
I think a myth that people have is kind of just how maybe that this is just going to be a fun place to be in and that's just it. Like I think when I first started entering the industry, I also had the misconception of, oh, my job is just going to be fun. It's just going to be rainbows and sunshine all the time when I enter, and just I'm just going to have fun because I love drawing, right? So I should never be annoyed or upset at any point. But no, it actually does matter because even if you love drawing and if you love art and if you think that if you have a job that involves drawing, that's not always the case. Some people enter like graphic design thinking that, oh, because I love drawing and design, that means I'll love graphic design. But maybe sometimes the way the industry works or the actual medium of graphic design is not really your passion, because maybe you want to tell stories. Maybe you actually want to have a character and dig into their psychology or something like that, that maybe that's interesting to you. So I feel like when people become a storyboard artist, they think like, oh, I'm going to love it because I love storyboarding. But what if the story is something that you're not interested in and you think the characters are dumb and you think that the storyline doesn't make sense and it's not something that you agree with? That kind of plays a huge factor in it, because there are some projects that I've been on in which the topic of it is something that I totally did not relate to. I found no interest in some of the stories or the characters, but I still had to just pull myself through drawing everything anyway. So I think that's something that you should take into consideration, is before you accept a job, like make sure like this is a job that you will actually like drawing the things of, or the type of story is something that you yourself would even want to tell. Because if you make a portfolio, try to do your best to make sure that the content within the portfolio is stuff that you would actually be interested in working on in a potential job. Because don't just make work to impress people, but it's stuff that you hate drawing. Like if you hate drawing dinosaurs, but you make a portfolio about dinosaurs just to impress people, but then you get sucked onto a show about drawing dinosaurs, you're going to hate your job, like to some degree, because you might love drawing, but then if that, like, drawing is so much energy taken away from you. You have to be physically present and actually drawing it. So imagine it being something that you don't like. So just be mindful of that before making a portfolio or accepting any job offers.
Yeah, that's so true. What do you wish you were taught about the industry or like working or now leading people?
I think knowing the pipeline is super important, because now as an assistant director, well, I have to also assist the director that I am also working under, but also helping like the board artists that I'm trying to guide. So it's like you have two people that you're kind of like trying to help and please. So I think you have to understand the pipeline in a way where you know what the workflow is, because this isn't something that they normally teach you in school. You'll get a very vague idea of it if you go to an animation school, because maybe if you make your own film, you'll know that everything starts off with a script, then everything becomes boarded, then everything gets animated. Like that's a very general pipeline. But in terms of just like knowing like, oh, we're in the phase of revisions or something like that, that's something that you don't really get to experience until you're in the industry itself. So knowing that this is the stage of the workflow we're in the part where we're doing revisions, which means that we're not brainstorming anything anymore, because we have a schedule that we must abide to. Because when you're on a show, every show has their own deadline of when they need to be done with the whole show and ship it to the studio that they're doing this for. And you have to respect that when you're doing something in a certain phase. Like, so if you guys are done boarding, you put the animatic together, and now you're just kind of doing revisions. Some artists kind of mistaken it as like, oh, we need to reboard something. We need to start, just erase all these boards and start from scratch. But really, all we wanted you to do was just fix up these drawings individually. It's very tedious and annoying, but it's just something that has to be done as a team to just get this thing from start to finish. So some people just tend to take the project under their own reins when no one really asked them to. So it's just like, I like, when I say this, it's gonna sound really bad, but it's kind of just like, just do as you're told in certain phases of the project. Because in the beginning, I think, yes, that's the time to explore and brainstorm and think of all the ideas that you ever want to try out. And that's like the very fun phase, because you can implement your own ideas and you can experiment with your own ideas and see if the show creator or director likes your idea and wants to include it in the project. But then when you're towards the end, where the animatic is already done and things are pretty much in its finished state, you want to just be finessing things, not fully boarding things out, because we're not in that phase anymore. And if you accidentally mistake people's advice and you accidentally do the wrong thing, you might be costing the team time, because now you're pushing the schedule back a little bit. So try to be mindful of that if you're storyboarding, is to know what phase of the project you're in, because most likely in the beginning you're brainstorming, you're exploring, you're having fun in the sun, but towards the end is kind of when it gets to the nitty gritty and it's kind of tedious and feels like homework assignments. But just know that it's ultimately for the better of the whole project.
Do you think that being on the both sides of the coin, so to speak, like the assistant director and being a storyboard artist has kind of helped you, I don't know, like
Mm.
learn?
Yes, for sure. I think like this is why it's good to just, I don't know, experience as much as you can So if you start off as a revisionist, you're going to pretty much be doing all of the things that the director or the assistant director is eventually going to be delegating for people to do. So having that knowledge of being a revisionist is going to be so beneficial for directors, and even being a storyboard artist will be very helpful too. But I feel like starting off as a revisionist just has that extra help because you know what it is you need to do in that state of revisions. Because some board artists just enter as board artists and they might not have had experience being a revisionist. And they might not know that being a revisionist is when you get very specific into like things that seem really annoying. Like when they're just like, go back and just make him wink in this one drawing in particular. Like that's when you're really focusing on details. So in that state of being a revisionist, it'll be very helpful for when you're an assistant director or director and you can tell people like, hey, we're doing revisions. I was a revisionist myself and I know what that means. So when you do these boards, just focus on fixing the drawings, just fixing the boards, and try not to go out of your way to do some explorative idea.
That's really interesting to know. This is the final question. What
Woo!
is something that you thought was scary, but you were able to overcome or get through?
So I would definitely say that I said this earlier, but my Cartoon Network pitch for some reason is the one that I always dreaded over whenever hearing about it. But now that we're like, now that that's kind of behind me and I'm kind of in a new phase in my life, something that I thought I was afraid of that I didn't think I would get over, was that the question?
Oh yeah, something you thought was scary, but you were able to overcome
Oh,
or at least
okay.
get through.
It's kind of, for me, what I said earlier about, oh, I used to be afraid of not going up to people and asking them questions when other students would go up to. That was like my second biggest fear. And I think that's something that I've definitely been better at now. I think I still can work on it sometimes because I feel like I could be reaching out to people more, but I probably don't do it enough. But also, we're in COVID times. So it's just like, how many people can you really meet? But also, with the internet now, everything is easier. But so during my time at Netflix, we had a lot of things called like mix and mingle or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of like you just have a lunch where you kind of have a random table with people who have the same number as you and you just kind of talk
Oh,
to
I've had to
people.
do one of those.
Yeah, they're very like
Uh,
they evoke a lot of anxiety, but I knew I had to do it, so I made sure I attended almost every mix and mingle at work because I knew that this would tackle a problem area in my life where I was afraid to reach out to people and just talk to them and ask them about their careers without seeming like I was just wanting to just, take advantage of them and just move up or whatever. So those really gave me a lot of opportunity to just know people beyond just being an artist. Like we could just talk about stuff like food, good places to eat in LA, or things that we like to do in our free time and stuff like that. So I think like that also just helped me in reaching out to people afterwards myself, because prior to that I kind of relied on these social events to just meet up with people, but then afterwards I was just like, I can just meet up with these people myself. What am I doing? So I ended up emailing some of the show creators I really looked up to, and I scheduled some one-on-ones with them, and they actually were just so open and okay with just meeting up with me, and they even showed me what they're working on. And just, I don't know, like things definitely turn out better than you kind of picture it in your mind, especially when you're filled with anxiety and fear. So things will definitely turn out better than you expect. You just have to go out and ask the person and take the leap of faith, and you'll be like, why did I even worry in the first place? Like that was so silly of me to over worry. And I feel like after you just get more experiences like that, as time goes on, you'll just be like, okay, I could just do this again the next time. So it's kind of like practicing, but also not, because earlier I said practice makes permanent, not perfect. But what I mean by this, I guess, is like you're just opening up yourself to familiarizing with these experiences and the feelings of it. Like you're practicing familiarizing yourself with these feelings so that you can be more courageous the next time that you have to go through this again.
Yeah, definitely. I can totally relate to that. I think you were one of the first people that I met when I moved to LA. But yeah, just asking people, just the worst thing that happens is that they say no, pretty much. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because like if they said yes to meet up, like it's only going to get better from that point on. Like, and normally the reasons why people say no have nothing to do with you. Like, if I said no to someone, it's actually just because I'm just so busy and overwhelmed, and I don't know if I could juggle having that right now. But it never has anything to do with like the person reaching out to me. It's always usually just based on schedules and timing. So, that's something that people like I feel like people should just learn to not take too personally because even with jobs and acceptances, like a rejection never really means that you suck. It never means that you're bad at art. Sometimes it does mean that, but usually if you got to the point of graduating in art school and you did everything to complete that degree properly, then you should be fine. But most of the time, people just don't accept people just due to timing and just seeing if you're a match or not. And it has nothing to do with your actual skill level.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really important thing to learn. Thank you so much for being on here. This was so much fun. Where can
Yeah.
people contact you or find your stuff?
So you can find me at New Tripled on Instagram or YouTube. I don't know why I still have that username. It's just my 11-year-old self that had a crazy obsession for Tokyo Mew Mew, and now I just have New Tripled as my name everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me here, Nicole.
Bye.